building looked like a Wandjina, and then to keep it going so that when, for our next generation we'll keep it going. And what you see in the back here, where the old Wandjina come from, the country, it's like from there all around there and across. So you got Moulton Paula Ellis and Moulton, they all relate to Magabala and all the Wandjinas. This part of the north is all that remote area about Wandjinas. That's what we say, the creation of Lala come from here. That's how the story goes. Lala dreaming. I created this and I designed it and make it as a Wandjina. So this is a Wandjina building. It's like in a cave, where you go to a cave and you see all the paintings. Well, this is why we built this art center, to be exactly the same. They do a lot of things, they do ceremonies and things like that for the young kids. And we have it every year. So next year we'll have more. Festival will be open for 3 days now. So give people a chance to come and have a look at all the different things that we get to do. So we keep doing it, we never stop doing things about Wandjina. What we done our book last year is very important but the Wandjinas that so people can understand more about our culture and dreaming and Lala all together. It's fun.
Hi, I'm Sven Ouzman. I'm an archaeologist at the University of Western Australia's Centre for Rock Art Research and Management, and I'm just going to tell you in 60 seconds about the Kimberley Visions project. This is a multidisciplinary archaeology project up in the eastern Kimberley, where we're trying to understand 50,000 years of rock art, how people who first came into Australia formed one large cultural block with people living in what is today Arnhem Land and even island Southeast Asia. To date, we found just over 1,200 rock art sites, stone arrangements, ethnographic sites, ochre sites that we have a number of PhD students working on, so that we can both understand this exciting part of our heritage, but also understand how better to manage it through exhibitions, displays, and working with Indigenous rangers, so that we can manage all of these sites on country. Australia mostly doesn't know very much about its rock art heritage, which is one of the world's best, and this is one of the things we need to change by translating our academic research into more publicly accessible information.
Hello, my name is Catherine Nigella. I'm a Nigella lady from the Fitzroy River, but I was raised here in country, the Wandjina country. I've been promised into this Ngarian tribe, and I have my daughter, my eldest daughter. We're at Imintji, and she is the traditional owner of Imintji Community. She's not here at the moment, she's away, but I'm in charge while she's away, and what we are doing now, we're at the art center, and as you can see in the background, we are doing some art. Yeah, and I get to tell stories when the buses come about Imintji. Sometimes, all depends on if I'm very happy to talk to someone. Yeah, but other than that, we like to share our culture and with people, and mainly Europeans, so they do have an understanding of Indigenous people, and we'd like to, keep it strong so our young ones can also tell their young ones and continue it. And as for now, like, we don't have any older people our old folks have all passed on, or in nursing homes. But we try to keep it flowing with our culture and our law, and so we feel happy and free to speak to people like you who come along.
Magabala Books is an Aboriginal-owned publishing house. We are the Australia's leading Indigenous publishing house, and we were established in the 1980s by Kimberley Aboriginal elders and cultural leaders who decided that they needed to take control of their stories. In Australia, there is a 200-year-old colonial history, and in the 1980s, many people from around Australia, many academics, were coming to talk to Aboriginal people in the Kimberley region in the northwest of Australia to ask them to tell them their stories, and they were writing them down. But elders felt that people were stealing their stories or not handling them appropriately. So they decided to establish a publishing house, which was a pretty extraordinary thing because we may be the most remote publishing house in the world. We are more than 2,000 kilometres from the nearest city, but we are a national publishing house. And to date, we sell more than 200,000 books around Australia, and we distribute to the United States. And wherever possible, we sell our books so that they can be published in other countries around Europe and Asia. So one of our earliest books was published in 1993, and this is a book called Yoro Yoro by a man called David Maljali. He's long passed away now, but he was one of the most significant cultural leaders in his area in the West Kimberley. And so he told a story about the important Wandjina creator spirits. So when Magabala published his story, there was a very in-depth process to ensure that elders approved the writing of the story. And to elders like Maljali, it was very important that stories were captured in writing because he saw the power of the written word, and he realised that this would be important for future generations. And so we have today, many years later, we still publish this book and we distribute it around Australia, and young Aboriginal people come in and say how grateful they are for all the work that he put into making sure that this book recorded the knowledge of the elders. That goes back very long way. In fact, Maljali was one of a group of men who once went to Lascaux Caves in France, and he asked the museum director, "What's the name of these figures that you see on your rock art walls?" And the people told him in the museum, we don't know their names. And Maljali was so shocked because he says, how can you not know their names? And I think that's the thing that perhaps people around the world will soon come to understand, that Indigenous culture in Australia reaches back so far. At the moment, people are saying 80,000, maybe before we know it, it'll be much longer than that. But that oral culture, oral transmission of knowledge has ensured that this information has been passed down through generations in a way that people can't understand, but science is just starting to catch up.
So this book, Dark Emu by Bruce Pascoe, he works in a university, and he's published this book. It's a very important book in Australia at the moment. It's important to all Australians because it gives a truer history of the Aboriginal people, and it removes the preconceived ideas of Aboriginal people only being hunters and gatherers, whereas in fact Bruce has placed accounts of pastoralist records and explorer accounts of evidence that Aboriginal people were in fact able to do aquaculture and agriculture. They also were able to have homes built of stone. The evidence is not there today physically because in all places where other civilizations come in or colonisation moves in, they will remove the building blocks to purpose for their own use. And so that's why you can't see the stone buildings today. So there were townships for Aboriginal people, and this book is a wonderful book, especially to me, because being an Aboriginal person, I can feel acknowledgement that Aboriginal people achieved more than what the colonists did say, that when they arrived the land was not being used, and that it was there for the taking, and not only that, but it wasn't of no use to the Aboriginals when in fact it was. And this book will go through that and take you through that. This is the European version of Dark Emu. It's published in Britain, but we're hoping to eventually have it published throughout Europe. Do you want to say some more about the Dark Emu book, Anna?
Oh, this has become a national bestseller in Australia, but we think that it does have wider appeal. Obviously, it's being published in the UK and also distributed into the United States. But I think there will be a growing interest in Indigenous knowledge. And particularly, Bruce talks about climate change. And he's saying in Australia, we really need to look at Indigenous knowledge to kind of take us to a future where we can grapple with climate change. And I think it's something that's not really well known too, is that we have Indigenous rangers in Australia. And our rangers just recently from the Kimberley have just travelled to Botswana, where they're teaching people how to use fire to manage land. Mm-hmm. We've had rangers from the Northern Territory go to Dubai, where they were teaching people how to manage dugongs, beautiful creatures in the sea. So these are the stories that have been very little known, but there's so much information and a wealth of knowledge here that needs to be respected, but that all Australians can benefit from, and there may be worldwide implications for